Now, I promise not to mention the book because I think I've mentioned it way more than I intended to today already. But I just have to mention it very briefly, which is that the point of today, the structure of today, it really comes from the book. So what I want to talk about is building a digital strategy, and I'm specifically talking about doing this right now. So in 2016, and therefore bringing in some of the trends. Now, as I say, the book goes into aligning your strategy with your organization and planning techniques and all kinds of bits and pieces like that. I'm not going to bore you with that stuff today because it's not exciting enough to talk about. But what I do want to talk about is these areas here. Yes, it's working great. So a little bit about technology and some of the trends that are going on that if you're building a digital strategy now, you need to consider. And those are going on either now or over the next few years. I'm going to try and make some risky predictions because I like to do that as well. I'm nearly always wrong, but why not? It's a bit of fun. I'm going to talk a little about content. We all know content is crucially important these days in any marketing strategy, so we'll talk a little bit on that. On social, which remains important and continues to change, and understanding those changes again is really important for your strategy. We're going to talk about experience. As I said earlier, experience is really increasingly becoming the differentiator within a marketing strategy. So we'll touch on that, a little bit on mobile, and finally on search. So we're not covering every area, but we've only got 45 minutes, probably not even that now. So we'll crack on through these things. So I want to start by just talking a little bit about where technology is headed. We've just had this session on technology this morning. Digital and technology, they are inseparable. Which drives the other? Question mark. Right? This is a bit of an ecosystem, but I think it's important to understand where technology is headed. So just wanted to talk through some of the trends that if you are building your strategy for the next few years, you've really got to think about and build in. So the first one is implants. Now I think wearables are barely upon us. I mean, I've got my little Fitbit on this morning, and many of you guys may have Fitbits or watches or various other bits and pieces, and that's only really starting to enter the retail space. But this is changing behaviours, the way people are interacting. Mobile, we will talk a bit more about mobile, but people are always talking about mobile and what we need to do in mobile. People are starting to detach from the mobile device now, and they're looking at wearables. And we're not too far away from heading towards implants. We're actually genuinely not, which it sounds very scary, but then touchscreens seemed quite futuristic just a few years before that went mainstream. So these things do, as we all know, they absolutely steamroll at the moment. So magnets is an interesting area for implants. So there is an example at the moment of someone who's using magnetic implants in their ears to be able to hear better, and I think this is moving its way into that general improving your hearing. But as a result of having magnets in his ears, he can hear heat and hear things that don't really make a noise because of the I guess, I don't know, I'm not a scientist, because something to do with shock waves or something, who knows. But yeah, really, really interesting. And there's a lot going in that field. I know of a guy who has an implant in his hand that he uses to unlock a door in his lab. He's a scientist, and to turn the lights on. And there's nothing new in that. I think many of us will work in organizations where we swipe in and we swipe to get through doors. It's a similar kind of technology. Obviously it's not a massive great swipe card in his hand, but that would be fairly uncomfortable. But you can see this coming together. It is at the moment the innovators that are using this, but you can see it's not too far away from becoming a mainstream piece. And it's worth considering. Do you need an implant strategy? Probably not. But do you need to be aware this is happening? And mobile is moving to wearables, and wearables will move to implants in the next few years. Yeah, you do need to be aware of that and think about what impact that might have on your business, if any. So there's ambient user experience. This is a really interesting area as well. So ambient UX is they talk about the device mesh nowadays. So we're surrounded by devices now, right? So we have our mobile devices, we have our Internet of Things, we have things all over the place, and there's devices all over the place, and it's the device mesh. What we don't have is consistent experience. We don't have these devices having common user experience between them, and we don't have them just listening and learning and understanding it. So we'll go on to, I don't know if anyone's got a Nest system here or similar, Hive or anything like that. You'll use that, and then perhaps you'll get on your phone and you'll set something there, and then you'll get on your laptop or your iPad, and everywhere you go you've got slightly different user experience. And what this is about, the ambient user experience, is about looking across all of these devices and being truly device agnostic, and really starting to learn user experience and keep it consistent across everywhere. That is going to be a big trend as well, and we need to be aware of that we don't think about how do we build a great mobile user experience? How do we build a great responsive site? We think about the one integrated experience across all our devices. So that's certainly going to be a trend we need to think about. Another is advanced machine learning. So this, for me, really is just a step on from big data. You know, big data has been a big catchphrase for a while now. There's something called the deep neural net, which sounds very Terminator and very Star Trek. That's coming into place with robotics, really. So where this is genuinely a data system. It will learn. It's artificial intelligence, but it will learn much smarter than it's ever done in the past. And understanding that advanced machine learning and what that will mean, how that will impact consumers in their day to day is again something that's worth doing some reading on and thinking about how you build that into your strategy. There's obviously autonomy. Autonomous cars are going to become mainstream. And that's certainly moving that way, and that's going to affect insurance, for example. It's then going to affect consumer behavior, which we'll just touch on very briefly in a second. But beyond autonomous cars, there's also things like Siri and autonomous assistants. There's also advisors. So there are robo-advisors in the financial services space as well. So those are becoming increasingly common. For me, as you know, I'm in Citi Private Bank. Not quite relevant for us to have robo-advisors at this stage. People want a personal touch, so implementing that would probably irritate people. But certainly in more of the retail space, that's very possible. And one thing I've always thought is apps are kind of temporary. When they first came out, they didn't feel really like they were solving a problem to me. They felt like they were just creating a solution to something that didn't really exist. And for me, I think this is where autonomy plays a part as well. And the whole, as we say, the Internet of Things ecosystem. So all these different devices talking together, but also we're getting into a place where apps will. There's experiments at the moment around streaming apps. So rather than downloading an app to your phone and using it, you purely stream the app and you use it. You don't need to download it. That effectively is becoming like using a website, right? And then we're almost going backwards there. So there's clearly over the course of the next few years going to be change in the whole user experience ecosystem, how all the devices fit together, how they work. Will we still be using apps in 5 years? I'm not sure we will, actually, personally. I think that they are going to fade out. There are certain apps, there's games and things that they're fine. But in terms of using apps for banking, using apps for services, will that still be necessary? Using apps for shopping doesn't feel like it's needed to me. So I think that's something we need to be aware of. Should we be spending the next 5 years developing the best app, or should we be thinking about what the great experience across all our devices is? And ultimately, that's the solution we're trying to get to. So just looking at one way this will change behaviors. Just looking at this stat on commuting, hope I haven't broken something there. 61% of us. This is a UK stat from the National Statistics guys. 61% are commuting in driving a car or a van at the moment, right? So in commuting hours, let's call it 7:30 till 9. 2/3 of people can't shop, can't be online, can't do anything because they shouldn't be anyway. Some of you, I'm sure do, but that's another point. They simply can't engage in your business between those hours because they need to focus on the commute. Some of us are in a train, but those that are in a car can't engage. Now, once we move on to autonomous cars, suddenly we open up a massive market here for our services at these times. And every piece of data we have on, we know consumers don't engage with us between 7 and 9. So, we only start to talk to them at 10 o'clock, or we only talk to them in the evenings or at lunchtime because they don't talk to us when they're commuting. All of that data that we make our decisions on, it's going to go out the window. As soon as autonomous cars come in, forget it. They'll probably use us more during commuting than they will at any other time. So the behaviors are going to get turned upside down, and that's something we need to build into your digital strategy and think about how technology is going to impact behaviors. So that's it on technology. Talking about content, interesting stats. So 24% of organizations at the moment are now devoting 50% or more of their budget to content. Right now, that I think is quite a powerful statement. Content is king has been around forever. Right, it's a phrase. It's more relevant to SEO back 15 years ago. It's now just a core piece of your strategy and marketing as a whole, and it impacts everything from SEO to social media to your advertising to every stream of your digital strategy. But what content requires is resource, and I think this is something that I think gets overlooked a little bit too often. You hear a lot from from the C-suite, certainly in a lot of organizations, we need to be doing more content. Content is king. Let's do loads of content. Start doing more content. And well, who's going to do this content, right? And you can't just take your marketing department and start writing great content, because great content, that thought leadership pieces that people are going to read, is not the same as marketing copy, right? It's a totally different skill set. Writing for editorial and writing for marketing are totally different tones, totally different concepts. So if you're going to build a really good thought leadership program, a really good content strategy, you need to resource up for it, and not just resource up, but resource up with the right skill set. So we at CITI, we have one editorial writer at the moment. Our thought leadership program, our content strategy, I only initiated it at the beginning of this year. So we've spent the first half of this year getting that going, just shaping it, and starting to see what the engagement levels are like. But we're going to need to ramp that up. We're a global business. We don't have millions of customers because we're ultra high net worth, so there aren't millions of potential customers. But we have people all around the world. We're not on 24/7 at the moment. We're releasing pieces Monday to Friday, pretty much 9 to 5. Not far off. I wish I did 9 to 5, but it's similar to that anyway. And for us, I know that some of our competitors are on 24/7. They have people in every region, so their content strategy is always going, and they're delivering a lot of content. That results in more engagement, more returning visitors to their site. It results in more trust, more authority, and authority both in the digital SEO perspective as well as in the brand perspective, and you just can't do this well without resource. So I think that's a really important point to keep in mind. You can't just switch on a content strategy without resourcing for it. You also need a consistent voice, and I think this gets missed too much. And again, when I say resourcing up, bringing people in that are using a consistent voice is a really, really important part of this as well. And having your brand values, having a very, very clear tone of voice in place. And again, I think this gets missed. When most people talk about brand in a lot of industries, many of you will, I'm sure, be fantastic at this, but there's still a lot of industries when they talk about brand that they're talking about logos and colors. Brand is not that. Brand is obviously the personality of your business. What do you stand for? Who are you? How are you talking to people? What are you trying to say? Each of you in the audience here, you guys are your own brand. I am a brand. Everyone is a brand. A brand is unique. It needs to stand for something, and your tone of voice therefore needs to be consistent. You can't talk differently on social media to how you talk on your website, to how you talk in your brochures, to how your salesmen talk to the staff. You've got to be consistent across everything you're doing, and that still, incredibly, is being missed far too often. So that's crucial now, so more than ever, as content becomes king. How much value is your content really creating as well? I'm going to tie these next 2 points together. Looking for trends you can capitalize on, but being authentic, right? So we're in the middle of Euro 2016. Today is the old Brexit piece. We've got the whole Trump stuff going on, right? There's a lot of big stories that are very obvious to latch onto. And, a lot of businesses are latching onto these. You hear people, nothing to do with football, talking about Euro 2016, nothing to do with politics, getting in on the Trump bandwagon, right? That's fine. There's no harm in that. And I think as part of a good content strategy, you need to build proactively and reactively. So you need to have an advanced program that you are, a calendar that you are planning what you're going to talk about on, but you also need to be able to react to those stories. That's important. But the key here is to be authentic. So to insert yourselves into conversations where you belong. Inserting your brand into a conversation where you don't belong is just going to irritate people, right? So again, we're Citi Private Bank. Should we be getting in on Euro 2016? No, we have absolutely no place to be there whatsoever. Having said that, before I was at Citi, I was at Fidelity. Whilst I was there, the World Cup was on. I did a social media campaign around the World Cup of economies, right? So we're not talking about football, we're talking about economies, which is the right thing to do for Fidelity. But we're using the fact that there's a World Cup going on to just get that level of engagement and familiarity with the audience. So it works really well. So we didn't insert ourselves into football, but we talked about a theme that was going on. And that authentic message is really important. If you come out and just talk about football and you have no place there, people are just going to get very, very, very annoyed. People are more, consumers now are more cynical than they ever have been. Consider SEO in your content strategy as well. So, writing a great piece is good, but you do need to consider the SEO elements of that. So how, are you getting the right keywords in there? Are you distributing that content out across for outreach as well? And what's the purpose of your content? So when you are putting your content calendar together, have you got a nice blend of information pieces that are there just for enjoyment, things where you're asking people to take a specific action? Is there a good blend of that? Are all of those appropriate to your organization? Those three categories are a good way of thinking about the pieces of content that you're developing. So we're going to segue from content into social. So the first piece here I want to say is not to write off Instagram, Pinterest, and Snapchat. Is anyone in this room using those channels as we stand today? Okay. And is anyone not using them but thinking about it? One. Okay. And is anyone pretty certain that they shouldn't be using those channels? Okay, cool. So, and that's absolutely fair. Not everyone should be. So, a private bank, we're not going to use Snapchat, right? That's not appropriate at all. So, it's not. I'm not saying you all have to use Pinterest, Instagram, and Snapchat. The point really is that these channels are developing fast, right? So, it's very clear if you're in more of a visual or lifestyle product. So, perhaps you're in beauty or something, that Instagram and Pinterest, this obvious, right? But these platforms are moving ahead at quite some pace. Obviously, Instagram's just hit 500 million users, as I'm sure you've all seen. But the developments they're putting forward in enabling brands to market effectively on their platform are moving at some real pace. And staying in touch with those and really considering them, don't just write them off, is important. So I'm not saying go and use them. I'm just saying with these that perhaps 2 years ago seemed like you might never touch them, just keep in mind, you keep checking these things every 6 months. Technology is always changing. These guys are innovating all the time. We all want to be innovating in our marketing strategies. So keep in touch with what's going on these channels, because there may actually be an opportunity that you might not be aware of there. In terms of how you manage social, social is not advertising, so don't shout. Watch, listen, and respond is key. So 70% of users expect a response now. 53% want it within an hour, and I'm pretty sure I'm right in saying it's 88% want it within an hour if their message is a complaint. So you're managing those social channels is again really, really important. So having those as conversations, really listening. The social listening tools are important. Just getting a content strategy out onto social isn't enough. How is social media responding to that? What reach are you getting? What are your competitors doing? Those are important messages. But having the processes in place are essential. So how are you going to manage complaints across the organization is key. Live streaming obviously is taking off a lot in social media now as well, and that's again worth keeping in mind. I'm going to preempt something that I'm going to say later now as well. I think I have a piece on video later, which I'm going to just steal a point from now. So live streaming is happening in social media with Periscope, Meerkat, various others. It has its dangers, and there's certainly been things that have happened on live streaming in social media in recent months that obviously aren't too pleasant, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, it might just be worth looking at that so you understand some of the risks. But certainly there's been a real growth in live streaming, and can you as an organisation take an opportunity of that through events that you do, through any form of marketing that you do, through sales opportunities, anything that's going on that you can stream across social media that can get really engagement. That's worth looking at, because people are getting very excited about live streaming at the moment. The point I'm going to steal. Hello, was that a guest presenter joining me on stage? Mr. Moth. The point that I'm going to steal from the other slide is around video, and I think this is a really important point to think about. Is that video? When you film something, okay. So if I'm going to film something, I get my camera out. I'd hopefully be using a bit more advanced technology if I was filming an official brand piece, but I would film it like this, right? Okay, because that's the way video works. Okay, that's the way it's going to show on my screen. So I film it that way. However, increasingly, video is being watched on mobile. Now, you don't hold your mobile generally like that. You hold your mobile like that. But we are still filming things that way around. Doesn't make any sense at all. Why are we making people turn their camera, their device around to watch it? Doesn't make sense. If your audience is primarily using desktop, fine, okay, makes some form of sense. But if you're doing a lot of social media, the vast majority of those people are on mobile. Why are we filming horizontal and making people turn their devices? It doesn't make sense. We should be filming vertically, and that is... Sorry, Stan, I moved. How dare I? So that's a really important point to keep in mind. If you're doing video, think about vertical video, because it just makes sense, right? And data is key. Obviously, social signals are impacting search. I don't think Google generally like to admit that too much, but it's certainly true. So understanding your analytics, understanding having your social listening tools in place, and seeing the impact that your social media is having, not just within the social media ecosystem, but across your digital strategies, is important to understand. You're not going to see, I did this on social, therefore I increase X ranks on Google. It's not going to work like that. But understanding how that works and the engagement levels and how they impact and your follower growth and everything. I'm not going to talk about Clout Score because it doesn't interest me. I'm not interested in vanity metrics. But understanding that and what impact that has broader than social is a really important part of your strategy as well. Experience, I mentioned it earlier, is increasingly becoming the differentiator. Quick show of hands, because we said we'd do some of this. So we said earlier, someone mentioned earlier about being client-centric. Who in this room has client-centric as one of their business values? If you've seen me before, you've seen me do this before. So of those people, just those people, your organization is client-centric. So how many of you have the client on the agenda, specifically on the agenda in every meeting you attend? One, two. Okay, right. So I think that's quite a statement. Now, I think there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that, right? But I think the point is that being client-centric, again, coming back to this point of being authentic, you have to really push for what you stand for. Being client-centric now is the way to win. It certainly is. It's been a cliche for a long time, but it genuinely is the way to win. But if you're going to be client-centric, you need to make your decisions around the client. You can't make your decisions around the sales, all right? If you're making all your decisions around how do we make more sales, you're not client-centric. You're sales-centric, right? I mean, it's obvious, but unfortunately, many of us fall into this trap. We're client-centric, but we'll compromise on that a little bit because we need to make a bit more money here, or the shareholders expect X, right? Well, that's fine. So you're revenue, you're profit centric, whatever you are, but you're not necessarily client centric, right? So I think being authentic to that is important, but genuinely putting the client first. That's just a little silly point, but genuinely putting the client first is really important now. Creating experiences that the client will love, not that your internal stakeholders will love. And again, I've seen this too much in organizations that the CEO wants you to produce something, right? So you produce it. You don't do any checks about whether clients want it, whether the analytics suggests it's a good thing. CEO says do it, you jump, right? It's a hippo culture. I'm sure many of you know that phrase, right? So highest paid person opinion, right? So that is dangerous, because then you make all the wrong decisions and you're going to annoy your clients, right? Sometimes your CEO is going to be right, all right? I'm sure all your CEOs are wonderful, fantastic, intelligent people, right? Sometimes they're going to be right. Sometimes they're going to be wrong, right? You're probably not going to want to tell them that. Maybe some of you are the CEOs, and that's great. But sometimes they're going to be wrong. And doing it from a client perspective is the secret, not doing things just to keep internal people happy. Big data and microdata, I mean, there's been a lot around this over recent years, and big data has become a phrase I think people are getting increasingly frustrated with, to be honest with you. It's not the size that counts, as my girlfriend keeps telling me. So thankfully. So big data for me it's great, but it's how you use this stuff, right? It's the human interpretation of it, as I was saying earlier this morning, that's key. And getting into the microdata, which for me is far more fascinating, of understanding people and creating that personalization that I talked about, is important. It's not about huge trends. It's about the micro detail and how do we, on a one-to-one basis, create fantastic experiences. Human-centered design comes back to the same point. So best practices are relevant. It's becoming increasingly irrelevant. So over the last 10 years or so, people have talked a lot around what does good UX look like? What is best practice? Who is doing this really well? We should do it like that. It's that's kind of irrelevant. What's happened for the last 10 years is not important. What's important now, people are increasingly beginning to understand, is how do humans naturally interact with things. Now, I always try and put myself in the mind of a caveman. I'm not even sure if caveman ever really existed. I'm not an anthropologist, but anyway, back in basic human beings, so I always put myself in the mind of what do I want, right? I want things simple, I want to be warm, I want to be in a community, I want to be sustained, I want things to be easy, the basic needs of a person, and then how do I fulfill them through what I'm doing? And that doesn't mean move an image an inch to the left. It means how do I create this in a way that naturally, organically feels like a great experience? And so kind of start with a clean sheet, forget what good looks like, and create what good looks like from how people naturally interact with things. It's great. I mean, I've got 2 young kids. It's great to watch them. I mean, they're obviously using touchscreens better than me already, and they're 3 and 5, and they were 2 years ago, to be honest with you. But I think watching them is great, because obviously they have no best practice, they have no knowledge to rely on. If you have children, watch them. Don't go and watch other people's children. Let me just put that message out there. But watch your own children, and it's great to see how they're interacting and what they naturally go to. And I see it all the time. I see them not too much on the internet, but certainly using apps and things. And I see them doing things that just haven't occurred to me. They're trying to do something, it's not working. I'm like, God, yeah, why have we done that? Why have we built that like that? It doesn't make any sense. They're trying, they swipe to get to something, and then they have to click to get to something else, but they're trying to swipe to get to it. Of course they are. It makes perfect sense. So creating those experiences around what's natural, not what's necessarily formulated as best practice, is an important area. And I'm talking about retargeting and getting this right. It seems a bit odd that this is within experience, but who's done kind of a lot of retargeting, kind of display retargeting, that kind of stuff in the past? Has anyone got frustrated with that and given it up? Yeah, okay. And I think, and this is no criticism of you guys at all, so don't take this the wrong way. But I think retargeting, we all, as a digital marketing community, haven't done it very well over the last 5 years or so. And I think it's in the same way SEO started out, got a really bad name for being a bit dirty, and then got better. And the affiliate industry the same, started out, got a bit dirty, and now it's actually fairly good. I think it's the same with retargeting. We did it kind of badly. So people would come to the site, they'd look at a product, and then we'd follow them around for the next month saying, buy this product, come on, you looked at it, buy it, buy it, buy it, buy it. It was £300, it's still £300, buy it, buy it, buy it, buy it. It's nonsense, right? They made a decision not to buy it. So stop stalking them, telling them to buy it. It doesn't make any sense. They're not going to do it. It's a waste of time, right? So really good retargeting is, okay, they came to a site, they saw this, they didn't buy it. So let's try and find out why they didn't buy it. Let's try and give them some kind of offer. Maybe they didn't like the color of it, but they didn't see that we've got another one in a different color. Maybe they didn't like the brand, but we've got another brand that offers a similar product, so maybe we should suggest that. And then from testing and learning, and we all know test and learn is crucial in marketing, from testing and learning these little things, we start to understand what it is we got wrong and how we can get it right. And that's going to teach us not only how to get the retargeting right, but also generally improving our sales cycles and sales funnels, right? So that's good retargeting. Not many people are doing it. And as I say, no criticism, just psychologically, I think we've just been getting it wrong for the last 5 years. So I think retargeting is going to have a bit of a resurgence over the next couple of years, and keep that in mind in your strategy. Okay, so we've just talked about vertical video on mobile, right? So I won't labour that point. Augmented reality. It's interesting. David from Specsavers this morning mentioned that he was talking about trying glasses on, and the first thing that came to mind is are they doing augmented reality? Are they getting a video you can look straight into your iPad and they just put the glasses on top of you? It sounds like that's something they're doing or about to do. That for me is going to become increasingly commonplace. Where augmented reality a couple of years ago was just kind of gimmicky on some apps and some games, I think genuinely that's going to become much more mainstream in how you can use augmented reality, especially in the retail space, but also in the servicing space. It's going to become really important. If you can say, okay, you're struggling with this area, we can lay this on top of it and show you, how we can help you. That's incredibly interesting. So keeping an eye on that area and how that can help experience is a good one, especially on mobile. Virtual reality, we know that's moving at quite some pace. It's not with us yet, but when it does come in, and it does certainly look like it will come in, it's not going in the direction of Google Glass, which is kind of hype and then disappeared. Once this comes in, we will see web experiences change. If people do start to use VR at home, and I don't think we're there just yet, but if people do start to use this at home, then the browsing experience is totally different. And as I mentioned earlier, it won't be using this monitor in front of me and oh god, the sun's shining on it. It will be genuinely, okay, I'm going to move that, I'm going to put that up there, I'm going to go over here, and then I'm going to pull that up from down there, and the browsing entirely changes. Your entire website can be surrounding someone. Everything they do on the app can be there without having to move to different pages, and it's just a case of how they maneuver and use that. You may not need to build that into your digital marketing strategy now, but if you're looking 5 years, which is probably a bit too long in a digital strategy in my opinion, but anyway, if you're looking that far ahead, it would be worth just having a consideration for, if this starts to accelerate, what are we going to do about it? We talked about this already. Interaction has moved from type to click to touch. We're moving into voice, as you know, with things like Siri. Gestures coming up, so there's a lot of gesture control, especially being used in presentations now. Not this one, as you can see. Not working. But I wonder how far away we are from thought, and if we go back to implants, are we getting close to thought-related control? No, not just yet, to be honest. Don't worry, you probably don't need to build it in your strategy over the next few years. But it seems like sci-fi, but with the way implants are going, with the way we're able to control things, perhaps we're not too far away from that. And it might just be, I love a bit of futurology, just thinking about what the future might bring. It might just be worth considering that. Again, you probably don't need to build it into your plans, but think about, as this technology advances, how could we as an organization take advantage of that again? App streaming we've talked about. So search, I don't know if you know, but mobile searches overtook desktop searches in 2015. We all knew it was going that way, but it's finally happened now, and that's a key point worth remembering. You can no longer make excuses for not having a responsive site. Mobile Geddon was last year. Mobile searches overtook desktop searches last year. You just can't miss out on this space anymore. It's never been more important. If you're not there, it should be your number one focus, in my opinion. Optimizing apps for search as well is an area that I think gets missed. So searches within app stores, you mustn't forget that. People are searching for products and services and within the app stores, and you've got to think about SEO from that perspective as well. I think structured data, I'm sure many of you know what that is. So tagging your site for structured data markup, for pulling out key information, pulling out authors, pulling out articles, pulling out recipes, whatever it is you work in. It's been done sporadically for a few years, but I think Google are going to focus more on this, and that's my view. I do quite a lot of work on SEO and have done for a long time, and I suspect Google are going to start to focus more on promoting this stuff to the forefront. So it would be a good time now to have a look at the structured markup on your site and review it and think if you're in a good place, if it's relevant to you. Content engagement obviously remains hugely important to search, goes without saying. Links likewise remain key, always have done, always will, still the most important factor. I always like to talk about this one. You probably can't see it, but in any detail. But this search metrics ranking factors. If SEO is key for you, and I'd imagine it's key for a lot of you guys. If you don't know this, then Google this, and it's a good report every year that gives a really high level summary by search metrics of what the key ranking factors are. It's very worth keeping this in mind. As I say, they do it annually. It does change. So it will tell you about things like social signals, things that, as I say, some of the search engines don't like to admit. It will talk to you about what those signals are. It will talk to you about your experience. So conversion factor on your site has an impact on SEO. A lot of things that you wouldn't necessarily think of. The speed of your site has an impact on SEO. That's been the case for a long time. But if SEO isn't your area, and that's totally fine. That's not something you focus on, but it is important to your organization. Then this is a really good way of getting a high level summary of some of the things you can focus on, because you can make huge impacts just by speeding up your site a little bit, something you might not think about, and it's worth keeping that in mind. Probably actually, if you speed up your site, you'll probably make more impact than you will by developing quite a more advanced content strategy, for example. So a lot less effort for a lot more reward. So I'm just going to have a little drink at this point. It's always the awkward bit of the presentation when you have a drink and everyone watches you have a drink. But anyway, so this next slide, you don't need to focus too much on the actual quality of this here and the messages. It's just an overall message that I'm trying to take here. So as I say, what I'm focused on really is integrating your strategy in the organization. Again, I touched on it a little bit earlier this morning, but all areas of your strategy, be they content, mobile, social, whatever they are all touched on by lots of different parts of your organization. I mentioned silos this morning. I think there is still way too much of that in organizations. Breaking those silos down and working collaboratively across the organization is essential, because you cannot build any part of your digital marketing strategy without engaging the whole of the business. I mean, this isn't every part of your business. Some of these may not be in your business, and there'll be lots of areas, I'm sure, that are missing from here that are in your business, but you cannot deliver your strategy without working alongside these guys, because you're not the only one impacted by any part of your strategy. So that's key. It may seem fairly obvious, but I see it get missed so often that I need to say it. So, know your enemy might be a bit strong. This is it's quite interesting. This personally for me, I find psychology quite interesting. It's one of the thank you. No, seriously, stop it. It's something that it's probably the main reason I went into marketing, actually, because I find psychology quite interesting. I'm certainly not a psychologist, but I find it interesting. This is about decision making. So when you're building your strategy and then you need to sell your strategy in, it's taken from the book. But when you're trying to sell it in, it's useful to understand how the decision making works in your organization. You may have one guy at the top. He may be all powerful and make every single decision, which is personal preference at the top. You may have right down at the other end, there is no single person that makes decision. Everyone has to get together, vote. You need a majority vote. More of a bureaucratic way of doing it, but certainly perhaps more representative of your organization, or you may be anywhere in between. And it's just useful understanding this kind of psychology of decision making in your organization, because it helps you position your strategy and how to sell it in to your leadership. So, and there's a little framework that I developed a few years ago for presenting your strategy. Again, if you are putting a document together, I'm sure all of you are very capable of doing this, but I find this a helpful framework myself. The 6 S's. So you start off with the executive summary as a synopsis, then the backgrounds, what story are you telling, how does that add up, how are you going to deliver it, and then obviously being prepared for questions is just a helpful way of structuring your proposal and your document. I think I'm running well ahead of time, so this is good. We're on the the final slide. So so that's me done.